So looking at the data we've acquired here, we know that I'm going to take the T8 and I'm going to suggest that it's 20 millimeters high at the anterior margin of that vertebral body. And then we're going to go and use the other data in that same area, that same table, and or that same report, if you will. I'm going to say that it's about 36 millimeters wide and about 30 millimeters deep. It's the best I can do to estimate what's coming off this chart. Okay, so the grid has been set, or I'm sorry, the settings and preferences under settings, millimeters has been set to the unit so that I can reflect those numbers. So we'll create, this time I'm going to create a polygon cylinder, and I'm going to make its height about 20 units because that's what we said that was, and the radius should be about half, right, half of the diameter. So the diameter was 36, so we'll make that 18. I'm going to leave it 6 axis divisions, 1 height division, and 0 divisions on the cap. Now when I create that, this is what I get. Okay, so the 6, let's see if I can find those to show you. So the 6 axis divisions is what gave me this 6-sided cylinder. And the reason I want that, I think you'll see in just a second. The cap divisions keep it open. There's nothing in here. And the 1 height division, if I go and increase that height division, oh, there's my dimensions I was looking for. Watch what happens. I get lines here. So with 1, it looks like I have none, but actually that's what 1 is. Okay. Now I can make that 2. So I've got this number selected. I've got the word subdivisions height selected, and I'm using the mouse, the middle mouse button. I'm sliding to the left or the right. I could enter numbers here. And what I'm going to do with those, use those edges. So I'm going to double click both of them. Double click this first edge. Hold the shift key, double click the second, select R, and that will scale the distance between them. The reason I'm doing that is when I hit the preview key, the 3 key, you can see how I now have a round cylinder with a bit of a cap here, if you will. Now if I undo that, take those 2 edges out. If I do that, you can see that if I take these 2 edges out, go back and let's say undo, see what it looks like without those 2 edges. When you preview it, smooth it, every one of the poly faces get divided in half, so you get this kind of too round a ball. So it's important to understand that adding those edges, either by doing using this subdivisions height, or if you want to do it, just say insert edge loop, and you can drag an edge loop, and now you see the difference. Now I have more of that kind of flattened disc. Alright, so go back to 1. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to actually, we don't want to have a six-sided face. If I had given the cap divisions, what we would have seen is like a pie. It would have cut it up like a pizza. And instead what I want is just one four-sided face on each portion. So what I'm going to do is use the, I'm going to pick that multi-cut tool and just go right across the middle and connect those two vertices, hit return, and then I've got this upside down, I guess. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I can zoom in a little bit so you see better. Okay, so now I've got, now when I smooth that, see again, now it's kept that shape a little bit more, kind of like a hat box would be. So that's not bad for what we want. The problem is we know the body has a bit of a, there's the canal for the vertebral column. Let's pretend that's the posterior wall. So what I want to do is kind of cup this or indent it to form a portion of that canal. Okay, about half of a cylinder or a tube, if you will. So I'm going to go back to the insert mesh tools, insert edge loop, and I'm going to create an edge loop along the front, and I'm kind of eyeballing these two lines just to help give me a similar position relative to the middle. And you notice it's not going to change much when we do the shape, but it isn't really what we want, so I've got to modify that a little further. So I'm going to grab the vertices here in the middle and scale them closer to one another. And I'm going to grab the vertices. Let me get closer so you can see that. I'm grabbing the vertices on the edge there in the front. You can see in the front, and scaling them closer together too. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to grab all four of these. So I'm just increasing the size of the rectangle I'm making. So now I have the vertices on the top edge, bottom edge, and the front. And I'm going to scale that a little bit, make it a little narrower, and then bring it forward a little bit. Okay, so that last step I might do is actually just take these faces, this face, and that face, the three faces, maybe make them just a wee bit narrower and bring them forward just a little bit. So that kind of gives me that shape. Now the question is, how big do I want to make that? If that's 0 and I'm going to, there's 10, there's 15, let's say it's about a little more than 15. And my dimensions were for that depth was 30. Well, that's not bad. If this is 15 back here, 0, 15, we're okay. That's about the size. So it's just a wee bit long there, and a wee bit too deep, I guess you'd call it. The posterior to anterior dimension looks too long to me because that's 15. So I'm going to move that back just a little bit. Okay, and I do that, now I have this problem where I've kind of lost the shape I liked. So I'm going to take the other edges there, move them back a little further as well, and then come back to that middle and pull it forward. So what we talked about in a couple of instances before, you never want to just put one thin line as a crease down the middle and then try to make this kind of protrusion because it will look like a sharp fold. I mean, if you wanted a sharp fold, obviously you would, but anytime you want a relatively gentle or subtle curve, you're going to have to use some type of face. You're going to have two edges and modify a face. So let's do the same thing from the back, from the posterior view. Let's bring these three edges, these three faces forward. Okay, and you can see now as we're starting to get that shape I wanted for the canal that around this. Now that canal is actually formed by the pedicles and the this portion of the body is literally making just the anterior portion of that spinal canal, but I'm going to move this just a little bit to kind of begin to mold that way. Okay, so that's the body basically. We've got everything we need on that. And you can adjust as you want, but one other thing I should probably check then is, what did we say the width was 36, so if that's 0, 10, 20, okay. Did I go off the grid here somehow? I'm in the middle. This one is, oh, I'm sorry, that's 15 and 15, and I really need to go a little wider than that. So I'll just make myself, if I say I need to go 36, I need to go to 18 on each side, so that should be about there. Okay, and that's T8, which is getting closer to the lumbar area, and so it's consequently it's a little bigger, a little broader than, let's say, T3 or 4 would be, and that's about what we got there then. Okay, so I got to do one little adjustment here. I just don't like the way this shape is quite so pointy here. Remember, we talked about how I didn't like that idea of using just one edge to create that kind of expansion. So I'm going to move this edge. I'm going to grab it, select just the edge, double click so I get the whole edge all the way around. I'm going to push it posteriorly. I like that shape just a little bit better. But now I'm a little too narrow up here, so I'm going to do what we did before with the anterior posterior. I'm going to add with the insert edge loop, a new edge loop there, and bring that out a little bit. Okay, maybe bring that forward just a touch. Now the problem is, by doing that, I've exceeded that 36 millimeter. I'm now like 40. See, you can see I'm at 20 millimeters on each side. So what I'll do is I'll just shrink both of these, or I'll scale them so I get back to that. Oops, sorry. You got to make sure to double click so you get the whole edge. And now I'll scale it. And that gives me that 18, and that's just a shape I think that looks better. Gives me a little more of that vertebral thing. And one of the nice things about doing this as well is I can use these edges, like I said, to modify that. So I kind of like that even better. Okay, so just a small modification. You can decide, this is again a schematic, so it doesn't have to be exact. It's just to give us references, and